So lads, the next multiplication strategy we're looking at this week is the factoring to multiply strategy. Now it's sort of the next step in regards to our associative property strategy, where we do break our numbers down into smaller parts to make them easier to multiply. So let's say I give you the sum 25 multiplied by 6. Now off the top of our head, that's not an easy sum to do, okay? So when we factor to multiply, it is about breaking numbers down into factors to make it easier to multiply. Now just to remember, a factor is when two numbers are multiplied together to equal a number. So for instance, 5 times 5 equals 25. So our 5, okay, because we've got two of them, 5 would be our factor. So let's do it this way, okay? If we break our 25 into factors, 5 multiplied by 5, okay, and we've got a 6 here, we put our 6 there. Now, just like the associative property strategy, we know that we can rearrange numbers to make it easier to multiply with each other. Now, if you did this, 5 times 5 equals 25, okay, you're back to exactly the same step as what we started with, okay? We don't want that. So if we use our associative property strategy and we rearrange these three numbers to say make it 6 times 5 multiplied by 5, it's going to find it a lot easier. So we do 6 times 5 equals 30 multiplied by 5. We now know 3 times 5 is 15, and because we're working with the tens, we must add that 0 in. So 30 times 5 equals 150. We now know, if we look at our original sum up the top of 25 multiplied by 6, our answer is 150. Now that's a fairly easy one to begin with, okay? Now let's go a little bit harder one. Let's use numbers that we have to factor both of them down. So let's go 25 multiplied by 14. Now, once again, very, very difficult to do in our heads. So the way that we factor to multiply is we split both numbers up, okay? So we know 5 times 5 equals 25, and if we've got 14, we know 7 multiplied by 2 equals 14. Now, this is exactly the same sort of issue, okay? We can keep it like this, but it's just going to be the same problem. So I might rearrange our numbers to make it a little bit easier. So I would go 5 times 2 to begin with. Then I'd multiply by my other 5, I reckon. And we'd finish with 7. So if we do it that way, 5 times 2 is 10. And like I said the other day, I want to see these steps, okay? I want to see steps because then it's a lot easier to give you guys part marks for when we get to our test. Now, 10 times 5 equals 50. 50 times 7 is what we're left with. And we know 5 times 7 equals 35. But because we're working with the tens, it must equal 350. Okay? Now, once again, this is our factoring to multiply. Let's just do one more, maybe a little bit harder one this time. What if we do 35 multiplied by 24? Okay, a lot harder again. Now, our factors for 35 are 7 times 5, okay? And we can have multiple ones for 24. It's really up to you how you want to do it. But let's just go with, to continue with somewhat of a pattern, let's go 6 multiplied by 4. Now, once again, we probably need to use our associative property strategy to rearrange our numbers. So I would rearrange my numbers so they end in a 0 or a 5. That's one of the tips I gave you in class. End with a 0 or a 5. So I would do 5 multiplied by 6 first. Then I'd multiply by, let's go 7, and then let's finish off with our 4. Let's see how we go. So if we go 5 times 6, we know that's 30. Okay. 30 times 7, or 3 times 7, equals 21. But because we're working with the tens, it's 210 multiplied by 4. Once again, still not the easiest sum to do in our head, but 21 times 4, okay, a little bit easier. You should be able to get to 84, and because we're working with the hundreds this time, it's 840. So we now know 35 multiplied by 24 equals 840. Now, at the start of this lesson, I reckon that would have been quite difficult to do. But hopefully now that you've seen the factoring to multiply, it's a little bit easier.